Hello, I'm Doug Watches. Welcome to the Locksmith DVD training program. The subject of this course is rekeying locks. Rekeying locks is one of the most common tasks performed by locksmiths, and a good understanding of the process is essential. After completing this course, you should be able to list 10 tools used in rekeying locks. List 5 types of information normally included on a pin kit chart. List the steps for rekeying a Quickset 400 series lock. List the steps for rekeying a Schlage deadbolt. Describe the process for removing the lock cylinder from the locks of at least 4 different lock manufacturers. Explain the basic process for the disassembly of a cylindrical lock. Explain that the Schlage A-series wafer lock must be removed from the door to be rekeyed. Describe the development of the modern pin tumbler lock. List at least 5 different modern lock technologies and give the name of the inventor. This course is divided into 6 parts. Part 1, tools used in rekeying locks. Part 2, how to rekey locks. Part 3, removing the lock cylinders from common locks. Part 4, the disassembly of a cylindrical lock set. Part 5, suggested practice. And Part 6 is a bonus section on the history of locks, Part 3. This is a lab pin kit, and this is one of the first things you're going to need to get a hold of. There's other manufacturers and suppliers of pin kits. Lab is one of the major suppliers. You can see that inside there's all kinds of pins. You have basically 3 groups of pins. You have bottom pins, top pins, and then little tiny ones are master pins, which we'll look into more in master keying locks. But they have different size kits. This is an 003 kit. You can get an 005 kit. I keep one of each. I have an 005 kit on my van. I keep an 003 kit here in my shop. And the main difference is the 005 kit has fewer pins that you have to supply, but the 003 kit, obviously by carrying more sizes, does get a closer fit sometimes than the 005 kit can get for you. So if we just look at a few of the pins here on this back row, you'll notice that each one of the bins is numbered, and you'll notice that there's an increase of 3 thousandths from bin to bin, because this is a 3,000th kit. If this were a 5,000th kit, then they would be every 5 thousandths. Even in this kit, the top pins are incremented out at 5 thousandths. So here we can see, let me get a hold of a bottom pin. The bottom pins are normally going to be pointed on one end. So you can see the point on that, that's a bottom pin. Here you can see top pins, and you'll notice that, as I mentioned, these are incremented every 5 thousandths. This bin's 180 thousandths, 185 thousandths in this bin. This one's 190, and so on. And again, these were going to be flat on both ends, so that pin can go in to the lock cylinder from either direction. Whereas the bottom pins, they need to go in with the pointed end down towards the key. You know, these are master pins, and again, as I mentioned, these are going to be incremented in the 3 thousandths increments. You have 42 thousandths, 45 thousandths, and then it should be 48 thousandths, but there must not be much use for 48 thousandths, so it jumps to 51 thousandths, then 54 thousandths, and so on. So they don't have like every one. They have the ones that are going to be most called for in the most standard of locks that you're going to be rekeying. You can see how small these are. These are very small. You're going to need tweezers to get a hold of these master pins. Probably, if you have good dexterity, I mean, you can grab them with your fingers, and I often do that, but with the very smallest ones, often you're going to need to use tweezers. Now, if we look on the back panel, as we open up the lab kit, on the back panel we're going to find a chart that provides the rekey information for some of the most common brands of locks. And you can see there's quite a few of them in this kit here. Not every kit's going to have this many, but this is what's available in this kit, all of these different charts. And I'm going to just kind of zero in on the Schlage chart and the quickset chart. And we're going to do quickset first, and I'm going to explain some of the information that you're going to find on that chart. Okay, so here we're looking at the back panel for quickset, the chart for the information to rekey quickset locks. You'll notice here at the top it says 0.023, 23 thousandths, and that is the increment the quickset uses between the different cuts. So like for a number 1 cut you got 328 thousandths, that's the depth of cut, but for a number 2 cut it's a difference of 23 thousandths, is 305, and then 282 and so on. If you do a number 1 cut, it calls for the bottom pin here in this row of 171 thousandths. So if you do a number 3 cut, you'd use 216 thousandths pin. Number 4 is 240, 6 is 285, and so on. This row here gives master pins, and we're not going to look into those right now. We'll talk about those when we do our course on master keying. If you need a top pin for a quickset lock, the recommended pin is 180 thousandths. Now there's some more information here at the bottom, and the information is going to be again different for each manufacturer, but here it says the effective diameter of the plug is 498 thousandths, almost a ½ inch. It's not quite a ½ inch. The first cut, the distance to the first cut is 247 thousandths, and the distance between the cuts, the center of the cuts, this is between center cut, it's 150 thousandths. And then it has a max of 5. Max stands for maximum adjacent cuts, and so you could not have you could not go from a 1 to a 7. Now that's not going to be a problem here because that's normally anyway, a 7 is not even used in a quickset lock. Normally the deepest cut in a quickset lock is 6. So you can basically use any of the cuts in quickset. From 1 to 6 it's 5, 2 to 6 is 4, and so on. 3 to 6 is only 3. So you're not going to violate the max. And what this is again the maximum adjacent cuts. So you don't want a difference of more than 5. But 5 is workable. Okay, if we move over and look at the Schlage lock now, we can see again the same basic information: depth of cut, what the cuts are, 0 through 9 for Schlage, the bottom pins, again master pins that we'll talk about later, and then the top pins. Now notice that Schlage has a difference in their cuts of 15 thousandths, whereas we saw in the quickset it was 23 thousandths. So it's a much smaller increment in the Schlage pins. Now also notice here that there's a difference in the top pin, that if you use a shorter bottom pin, then you use a longer top pin, and if you use a long bottom pin, then you use a shorter top pin. So coming on down towards the bottom of the chart here, you can again notice that the effective diameter here is 500 thousandths, or 1/2 inch. The distance to the first cut is 231 thousandths. The distance between the cut centers is 156 thousandths. And also notice here there's another note here that it says that if you need to use the 237 thousandths pin here, that they recommend that you take a bottom pin of 237 thousandths and turn it upside down to fill in here in cuts 1 through 3, or 0 through 3. So look at the notes that come along with each one of the charts. Notice that in Schlage there's a max of 7. Again, it's difficult to violate that, but you could violate it. They go 0 through 9. So if you went from that would violate the max. You could go 2 with one cut, and the next cut could be a 9. But you could not go from 1 to 9. That would be too big of a cut. And what would happen is that when you cut the 9, it would eat away part of your number 1 cut, or eat away all of your number 1 cut. so that it's just not workable with that grade of difference between the two cuts. The biggest difference that they're recommending that you have is 7. So I want to go ahead and explain a couple of terms here. The effective diameter or working diameter for the different manufacturers. And we saw that in Schlage, their effective diameter was 500 thousandths, or basically a ½ an inch. So for a number 4 cut, it said the depth of the cut was 275 thousandths. Now this is a Schlage key, SC1 keyway, and this is a number 4 cut right here. And that's measured from the bottom of the blade. So you can see that on the number 4 cut, we got 275 thousandths. And the bottom pin for a number 4 cut is 225 thousandths. So you have the 275 and the 225 give us a 500 thousandths, which reaches the shear line for that pin stack. Now you will need additional pin kits if you intend to work on other manufacturers of locks, especially the high security locks like Medico. We cover Medico in course number 18. But again, the lab kit is not going to work for your high security locks. So just be aware of that when you get to these other types of locks, which pretty much fall in the category of high security locks, you will need different pin kits. We cover Medico in course 18. We'll cover multi-lock in course number 19, and they of course have their own pin kit. And then I have a kit that I just made up because it was economical to do it to get the pins that I needed. But the Schlage Primus lock, you're going to need a kit for that when you begin working on the Schlage Primus locks, and we cover that in course number 20. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other little tools that we're going to need in rekeying. You're going to need a couple of small screwdrivers, a flat tip and then a Phillips tip screwdriver, and occasionally you may need something a little different, but basically 2 screwdrivers on your desk is what you're going to need. I recommend you get a scribe and always have a nice paper clip around. This is a wire tool that comes with many locks to depress the wafer to get the handle off. So little wire tools like this, like I say, even a large paper clip can come in handy for poking down retaining wafers. These are all plug followers here, and they have different ends. Some are hollow, most of these are solid. Notice the ends are different as far as the width of the gap on these. As I said, some of these are hollow. Here you have real thin ears for the Schlage F cylinder locks, but you can get by. Once you get more skilled at rekeying, you'll find that oftentimes you can get by with just using one plug follower. But it is nice to have several different end pieces around to match up to the end pieces of the lock that you're working with. Here's a set that comes from HPC with 4 different size followers. You will encounter different sizes, but for the most part, you're only going to be working with the standard size, which measures right at 500 thousandths. And the common followers will work for nearly all of the locks that you're going to encounter. And like I said, once in a while, you will come across one that is a different diameter. Okay, some other tools that'll come in handy is a good pair of tweezers. These tweezers, the ends are fitted to grab the pins with. And this one here, for example, is by Lab. The same people that make the pin kit, they make a nice little pair of tweezers. If you want a larger set, you can look at, again, the Locksmith tools section of the suppliers, and you'll find different size tweezers available. These are key gauges. This is from Lab again, and this measures the cuts of a key. It measures 5 different manufacturers. It's got Westlock, Master, Weiser, Schlage, and Kwikset. And then this is a little key gauge that Schlage puts out, and it measures the slug cuts of the key. But what's nice about it is it has these little slots that will help get off the clips on the back of the plugs. And it also has a little tool to depress the locking wafer with to get the handle off. So that's a good little tool. I recommend both of those tools. And as I mentioned in the last course on lockpicking, you're going to need a set of lock picks for use also in rekeying, because you're going to have to be able to get the plugs turned. And if there's no key, you either are going to have to pick the lock open or shim the lock open. And we'll talk more about shimming in the next course. But you will be using your lock picks again a lot in rekeying locks. This is a quickset tool. You're going to need one of these to remove the lock cylinders from quickset locks. This is a cap removal tool. You don't necessarily have to have this, but it makes it a lot easier to remove and then replace the screw caps that are on the end of many plugs that you will encounter. It has two different size tools, one on each end for different size caps. Another item that is very handy is a plug holder. If you're working with a plug, you need to sit it down for a minute. You don't want your pins to fall out. Just have a plug holder handy to stick the plug in. Also, probably a small pair of vice grips would come in handy, and then you're also going to need a small vise from time to time. And occasionally we're also going to be able to use a pair of snap ring pliers, so you want to have a pair of those in your toolkit. Now in rekeying locks, one thing that is very helpful to have is a bucket of keys. And I have two buckets of keys. These are basically the SC1 keyway, and these are the Kwikset KW1 keyway. And if you have a bucket of keys like this, when you want to rekey a lock, you can simply go into your bucket and pull one out and use that for your pattern key to key your lock up to. So try to save keys that are in good condition, and preferably original manufacturer keys. That you're going to start coming across key blanks, and you're going to come across the original keys where you have extras. And when you have the extra keys, just toss those into your key bucket, and you'll start having a collection of these pretty quickly. Since Kwikset is probably the most popular brand of residential lock in the country, we're going to look at it next. In this first activity, we're going to rekey the very popular Kwikset 400 series lock. There are a number of other popular Kwikset locks. We provide information on the Kwikset Titan and the Kwikset Ultramax in course number 16. I'm going to rekey this Kwikset lock, and I want to just talk about this briefly and explain a little bit about this lock, because this lock is so popular that there are just millions and millions of these, and not only of the Kwikset brand, but there are other locks that are basically the same design with different names. So it's really important to understand how it works. Normally you have to take this lock off the door to rekey it. There is a tool on the market that will take this lock cylinder out of here. We'll just pull it out, but without that tool you'll need to take it off the door. It has two screws that hold it on. Take the handle off, and of course this latch part would stay in the center of the door. But what I want to show you first and get you to think about as you take these off the door, you need to pay attention to which way the door swings. Normally, you can see that there's a C shape in this latch assembly that has this connecting piece passes through that. This normally points towards the hinges. So it's important to kind of pay attention to that so that you can get the lock set back in correctly. So the same thing would apply here, that that the tops or the outer edges of this C shape would normally point toward the hinges. Okay, now the reason that's important is that this lock set will go back in either way. So I mean, you could turn this 180 degrees and it would still work, but you want to try to get it so that the bottom of the keyway is down. That's the correct position to have the lock installed. Okay, now to start with, you're going to need a little tool like this one. This is a quick set tool. I've actually filed this one out a little bit. I think it works a little bit better in removing some clips and things that I use it for. But they're only a couple of bucks. You can get these from your supplier, and that'll be used to push this out. This lock cylinder is held in here by two springs. There's one on this side and one on this side, and this goes in to the back of that lock cylinder and grabs those springs and pushes that lock cylinder out of there. Now the first thing we need to do is to take out this spindle, and the way we do that is we turn it. You notice that there's a little piece here that kind of sticks up off of the spindle, and if you just watch that, you can see that if we position it up like that, that's the easiest way to get that out. And what's going on as I turn that back and forth is this is the locking mechanism. If you look right here, you can see this go up and down right here. I'm going to hold that a little closer to the camera and turn that. See it go down, back up. Okay, when it's up, it's locked. When it's down, it's now unlocked. So we want to turn this spindle so that this piece that sticks up is pointing straight at this post right here. Then we take this end of the wrench, we put it right in here, down underneath here, and we twist that in there, and there's a spring-loaded mechanism here that retains this spindle. So as we push that in like that, it releases that spindle and it will come out. So, just to make sure everyone can see that, I'm going to hold that up to the camera so we can get a good view of that. And again, here's your little tool. Goes right at the top of this spring-loaded mechanism, goes underneath and turns. Now you can use anything for this. You could use a screwdriver or whatever, but you're going to need this little tool, and it's ideal for this. So just like that, once you push it in, you can pull the spindle out. Okay, now the next step is to use the other end, and we stick it in to this hole right here. Now you'll notice there still is a little door here. We'll try to get a good view of that. The door is right here. Right here. This here's got to be pushed in to get this tool. So you kind of go at an angle and grab that door and slide that down in there. Get it down inside. That's how you do it. Now you want your tool lined up with these posts. You don't want to turn like this or like this. You want it lined up with the post. Then you push down and it'll hit the springs, and sometimes the cylinder will just pop out like so. Okay, so I put that back in, and I'm going to show you now. If it doesn't just pop out, just keep a small piece of wood handy. Just we're going to just tap that on the wood a little bit, just very, very lightly. And you can see that it'll come out. You know, these are the springs here that were holding the lock. You need to check those once it's out. You may need to bend those back a little bit. There is a snap ring clip on the back holding the plug that we're going to take off. And again, we can use the same tool that we were using and just push that off. And just lay it right there. Try to get in the habit of just whenever you take a part off, just line them up across the top of your work areas so you know the order that they go back in. Okay, now with the clip off the back, we can just push the plug out. Just like so. And now we're ready to rekey this lock. So we got all 5 pins here, all lined up nice and flush. They work for this key, but the owner wants a different key for this lock. So we're going to just toss these out. Okay, so we're going to go to our bucket of keys and pull us out a quick set key to use to rekey this lock to. This is a little tool, key gauge. It's made by Lab. Talked about them already as a manufacturer of tools for locksmith work. And this particular key gauge will do 5 different manufacturers. We're interested in the quick set, which is this one right here, the bottom slot. And it's very simple to use. All you do is put the key in there. You start with the first space. Remember that we start at the bow with most keys. We start at the bow, and that's the count out. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to measure the number 1 space first. And again, very simply, just take the tool, put the key in there in the number 1 space, push it down as far as it goes, and then read the number directly above it. In this case, it's a 4. And we'll do the next space will be the number 2 space. It goes down to 5. So we got 4 or 5. You want to keep the key nice and straight up and down in the gauge. That's another 5. So we have 4, 5, 5. The number 4 is a 1. And the number 5 space is a 3. So 4, 5, 5, 1, 3 are the cuts on this key. Now we're using an 003 lab kit, so I simply look at the back panel on the lab kit, and I know that a number 4 pin for a quick set would be a 240. So I grab a 240, and that goes in the number 1 chamber. You see it fits nice and flush. Then we add 2 5s, and 5s are 261. So we're going to need 2 of those. And those go in the 2nd and 3rd chambers. And again, fitting nice and flush, so we know those are the right pins. And we had a 1, and with quick set, a 1 is a 171. Goes in the 4th chamber, and then a 3 would be a 216. Goes in the 5th chamber, and we have our plug filled. I always turn my plug so it's at 3 o'clock to the chambers, with the chambers being at 12 o'clock. I just push it in, then I turn it back and let the pin, and then very carefully take the key out. If I just pull this out, it's possible this plug can come out and all the top pins will come flying out. Put my thumb and finger against the plug and gently pull the key until at least one of the pins drops down into the plug. That will hold it. But you want to be careful, otherwise you'll pull it out, all your pins come flying out, and you have to rebuild the lock. But that's it, it's keyed up. We want to put our clip on the back. And we have our new key, just like that. Back in. Now, as I mentioned, it's you always want to kind of know which way the door swings so that you can get the bottom of the keyway down. That's the correct way to install the lock. And I know you'll see many locks that are not installed correctly out there. You know, for whatever reason, but as a locksmith, we want to try to always have them installed correctly. So if the door with the hinges, again, the top of the C pointing towards the hinges, I know that the bottom of the lock would go, keyway would go down. And so then once I am sure I have that right, I just push that in. It should just snap back in there. Just like so. And then all we have to do is put our spindle back in. You can just take the same tool that you used before, put it right in the end of the spindle and just push down on it. Turn it back and forth, make sure that it is operating properly, and that lock is ready to go. Okay, now here's the chart that is on the back, on the inside cover of the pin kit, the lab pin kit that we use to pull our pins to rekey our lock. Now with our key was 45513, and we can see that with the number 4 cut, it calls for a bottom pin of 240. With the number 5 cut, and we had 2 number 5 cuts, remember it went 45513, so we would have needed 2 of the 261s. The number 1 cut was a 171, and the number 3 cut was a 216. Let's review the steps that we just went through in rekeying this quick set key and a knob lock. First, we remove the lock from the door. 2, remove the key from the lock. 3, turn the spindle tab to point at the stem. 4, depress the spindle retainer. 5, remove the spindle. 6, insert the quick set tool. 7, push out the lock cylinder. 8, remove the plug retainer clip. 9, insert the key and turn the key 45 to 90 degrees. Use a follower to push the plug out. Dump the old pins out. Check for master pins. Select a new key. Measure the key with the key gauge. Pull the pins from the pin kit. Insert the new pins into the plug. Replace the plug in the shell. Replace the plug retainer clip. Replace the lock cylinder into the knob. Replace the spindle. Then test the new key and install the lock. I want to show you the quick set deadbolt, which is much like the knob set that we just did. I'm not going to rekey this. I'm going to just show that the similarities here. With the deadbolt, there on the inside of the door will be 2 screws that you simply unscrew those 2 screws, and then this comes off the door, and this piece will just come out. And now you can see it looks just like the lock cylinder that was inside the knob set. It doesn't have the springs on it because it's retained by the 2 bolts, but it does have the clip. We can use the same tool. We can take the push this clip off, and then we take this tail piece out. simply push that plug right out of there and then rekey that, and that's all there is to it. So that's the quickset deadbolt. Okay, I want to discuss this quickset lock cylinder just a little bit more. This is so common of a lock, and there are so many other locks that may not even have the same name, but you will see they have a very similar design, that it's important to really understand this particular lock right from the very beginning of your work, because you're going to encounter it right away. I've already explained how to take this lock apart, but there are other things that we can do should we get in a situation where the lock is not cooperating with us. And so I want to just show exactly what all is inside here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a follower here and take this plug out. Okay, now we already know that we have the bottom pins inside the plug. So we're going to put that aside. But if it were necessary because you had one of these locks that maybe you couldn't get open, or you were having trouble with the lock, this cap here will come off also, and everything can be put back in from here if so needed. We don't have to put it in from this direction. So I'm going to go ahead and I could just pull this out. I could just pull the follower out, and all of the insides would pop out. But I want to show that they're underneath this cap right here. So I'm going to take this cap off. Yeah, when you do this, especially with a follower in there, you want to really kind of hold on to that, because all of the springs got quite a bit of tension on them. And so I'm just lifting the cap very, very slowly, and you can see the springs there. So those are the 5 springs. I'm going to take those out. Set those aside. Now there's 5 top pins in here. Now the top pins in this quickset lock are all the same. So I got 4 of them. There's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins. And that's all there is in the lock. But you may come across a quickset lock where you need to get it apart and the key won't work. You can't pick the lock open for whatever reason, but you can get the lock out. You can get it apart and get the lock cylinder out. Then you can just simply pop the cap off, take it apart, and key it up or rekey it, whatever you need to do with it, and put it back together. Now, I'm putting it back together. Normally, it's a good idea to put the plug in. Go ahead and take the key out. Drop a top pin down one of the chambers. I usually put it down the last chamber and just work my way up. But you put that, make sure it drops down in there, and it should help hold that plug in. And then go straight on up. Put all the top pins back in. If you need to use tweezers for this, you can use tweezers. Sometimes I have to use tweezers to get the one way up here, the number 1 chamber, back in. Now all the top pins are back in. All I have to do now is put the springs in. Like so. Make sure they're pushed down in there as far as they will go. Take your cap. If the cap got bent, taking it off, just kind of bend it back or get a new cap. Now the reason that you don't want a key in there is because you want these springs to fall down as far as they will. If you put a key in there, it's going to have them pushed up too high, and it's going to be difficult to get the cap back on. But with the key out, you just put it over the springs and push it down on there. Make sure that it locks down good on both sides. And there it is back. Put the clip back on the back, and it's good to go. Like so. Just like that. So that's another way to take one of these locks apart and then rebuild it if you get in a situation where you need to do that. Okay, I also want to show how to check for master pins in the lock. Now we already know that on this quick set lock we can simply take the top off and take the lock completely apart and see what all's in there. But there's another way I want to show you. So taking the plug out. Now I put a couple of master pins in this lock just to so I can make the demonstration here work. But whenever you do rekey a lock, and any lock that you come across could have master pins in it, and it's a good idea to get those out because they can interfere with the operation of the lock if you change the pins. We just simply take a screwdriver, and this takes a little practice but not much. Take the screwdriver, push the plug back, and then keep the screwdriver down low. Let the pin pop up. Okay, now then I can see it come up, and I push the master pin off. If you could see it right there, there's a little tiny master pin right there. And so I just popped it up, held it with my screwdriver, and then used the plug to push this pin off, and at the same time pushed the top pin back into the lock cylinder, back into its chamber. So there's that one. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the second chamber. Okay, the first chamber just popped up. Okay, now there's the second chamber. Now, again, if you look right there, you see I did the same thing. I was able to simply push that master pin out of there. It's right here. It's very small. It's about probably 40 or 50 thousandths on that. Very small pin. We get into master keying later, and I explain more about that in the video on master keying. But for right now, as you're rekeying locks, it is important to check for master pins. Now let's say we're doing this and one of them gets away from us. We're doing this and it gets away. Like the bottom pin comes out and possibly the spring could fly out. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and just let those come out. Spring doesn't really want to come out of there. I got it out. There it is. What I'm going to show is a way to put this back together without taking the lock apart. Okay, the first thing we have to do is grab our spring, and we simply turn the lock cylinder so that the top is down. Grab the spring with a pair of tweezers, put it in there, push it down like so. It's right here. The spring is right here. I just pushed it down in there, see? There it is, it's down in there. Then I'm going to grab the top pin with my tweezers, and I'm going to get just the top third of the pin in the tweezers. And I'm going to put the top pin on top of the spring and push it down. At the same time, I'm going to push the plug up against the pin. You see it popped loose there. I didn't quite have enough pressure on that to hold it, so I'm going to try again. Okay, trying to do this on camera, but this is actually good. Now I got two pins out, but trying to do this on camera and hold that so you can see it, I actually was let the second chamber come loose. So I'm going to put both these back in. Grab the top pin, push it down, put pressure on the plug to hold that top pin in there. Then just push it down and then let the follower come over it. Get the next one. Do the same thing. Grab it by the top third of the pin, put it in its chamber, push the follower up against the pin to hold it, get your tweezers on top of the pin, push it down. And that's how you get them back in there. So, should those come out on you, of course the other way I've already shown you is to take the cap off and rebuild the lock like that. And so now you know two ways to get the pins back in the lock on this type of lock where you have the removable cap. Okay, next we're going to rekey a Schlage deadbolt. And the Schlage deadbolt has two bolts that hold it on from the inside. If you take the two bolts out, take the thumb turn off, and then you can just pull the lock off. The bolt part can just stay in the door. If you do take the bolt out, it does have a top that when you put it back in, you want to make sure you get it turned so the top is at the top of the door, towards the top of the door. Okay, now some Schlage locks have a crank that slides over this tail piece. And so if there's another piece on here, you just slide it off. This is the lock cylinder in here. And I could rekey it with actually leaving the lock cylinder in the housing, but I'm going to take it out so we can see it better as I do it. It has one screw here that holds it in. Okay, now you'll notice that this looks quite a bit different from the quickset deadbolt that we rekeyed. The cap on this is not really designed to come off. It will come off, it can slide off the back and you can put it back on, but it's not as friendly as far as taking it off and putting it back on. But we don't need to do that normally anyway. So we have a screw cap on the back. There's a locking pin that holds the screw cap on, and you can depress this with a wire or a pick or whatever, or you can use the tool. You can use the cap removal tool if you have one of these, and that's normally the fastest way to do it. So you just unscrew the cap. We take off the cap, the tail piece, and the washer. There's three pieces there. So the next thing we do is take out the locking pin, and there's a little spring under it. We want to see if it'll come out. And I usually just put it right here on my mat so I don't lose track of it. So we put our key in, turn our key 45 degrees or so, between 2 and 3 o'clock. Push the plug out. Go ahead and dump our pins out. You always want to count your pins and see if you have the 5 pins, that everything is there, supposed to be there, there's nothing extra. If any master pins do come out, That's again a signal that you need to check your lock shell for master pins. Of course, we're going to check it anyway, and that'll be the next thing that we do. And again, we're going to just take a screwdriver and pull the follower back, and I'm going to... Now, one thing you want to do is you want to be sure you know which end goes in first. Which end did you push the plug out with? Notice this end's flat. There's no slot. This end has a slot on it. This was the one I pushed out the plug with. So as you're turning this thing around, working on it, you don't get mixed up as to what was the front of the lock shell. So anyway, we just pull our plug follower back and see if we can look for any master pins. Now here you can see the first chamber starting to come up. I'm going to let it come up. There is a master pin there. Now I'm putting pressure on this pin, which is the upper pin. I put it back down. Okay, so I have both the number 1 and number 2 drivers, or upper pins. They're underneath my screwdriver. I'm going to push them back down, and I'm going to push the follower back over them. And then the other master pin is right here. So now I'm going to check for the number 3 chamber, and this is going to be really hard to see on the camera. But here's the first pin came up, here's the second pin came up, there's a third pin came up, and again, I'm not going to be able to get a good picture. They're all 3 up. There's no master pin under that third one. I'm going to push it all back down, slide the plug follower back over that, and then we're going to check the back for master pins, chambers number 4 and 5. Okay, there's number 5. You can see it there, but there is no master pin up there. I'm going to check number 4. You probably won't be able to see number 4. There's no master pin there. Put the follower back over it, and I can go ahead and rekey the lock now. Okay, so I go to my key bucket for the Schlage SC1 keys, and I pull a key out. 87746. Now, the one thing about Schlage, see, they put the numbers of the cuts, they're stamped on the original keys. So we don't even have to measure the key really, but if we had an SC1 key we wanted to use, and the cuts were not stamped on the key, we could take our key gauge and measure it just like we did with the quickset key. Okay, so we're going to write our cuts down. For cuts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's 87746. And for number 8, it's a 285. For the 7s, it's a 270. Number 4 is a 225. And number 6 is a 255. And that would be the same even if you were using either an 003 kit or an 005 kit. Both kits have these exact pins. Then again, on the back of the pin kit, this is where we got our information from. 8 was a 285, 7s are 270s, 4 is a 225, and the 6 is a 255. Now again, before I put this back together, I want to show you one more time that if you're working on looking for master pins and something happens, you accidentally lose one of your drivers, one of your upper pins comes out, just pick the pin up, grab it by the top of the pin, put it over the spring, this is the number 1 chamber I'm working on, over the number 1 chamber, the spring is in there, push it down, push the follower up against it to hold pressure so it can't get away. Put your tweezers on top of the pin, push it down, and then push the follower over. And then, obviously, if you have, say, the first 3 came out, you would go in and do number 3 first, push the follower up, then do number 2, push it up, then do number 1 last and push it up over that. So you'd have them all in there like that. Okay, so I have my new key in the plug. I pulled the pins. We had 87746, so I load them in. That's an 8. That's a 285. Then we had 2 7s that were 270s. And we had a 4, which was a 225. And a number 6 was a 255. Make sure the little pointed ends go down towards the key. Take the plug, turn it again between 2 and 3 o'clock, push the shell back over the plug, turn it up so that it locks in, and we're ready to put the pieces back on the back of it. First, we have to put the spring in that is underneath the cap locking pin, and the cap locking pin goes on. Then we have the tail piece with its washer, and I have both pieces right there. Hold those on there, take the cap, put the cap over all of that, get it down on there. Then you can take your cap tool, if you have one, put it down over the cap, and then I normally turn it counterclockwise and it'll just pop right on there where it's supposed to be at, and then start going clockwise to screw the cap on. Put it on tight, back it off one castellation. Make sure your locking pin pops up and locks the cap in. Then take your key and make sure that the cap is not too tight. If you only went one castellation, you wouldn't be able to loosen it up anyway. But sometimes if you go one castellation, it is still too tight. But so you can loosen it to 2 castellations and get that so it moves freely. You don't want it too loose. If you get it too loose, you're going to have the plug try to move back and forth inside the shell, and it'll lock the key in there and make the key hard to get out. So if you can't get your key out, you're pulling, and the key won't come out, then more than likely this cap is too loose. But now when you put in a new key with new pins, it's going to be a little sticky anyway. But it should come out fairly easily. Okay, we put that back into the housing. We put our screw back in that holds the lock cylinder in there. If there was a crank on the back of the tailpiece, go ahead and slide that back on, and then you're done. You're ready to put that back on the door. Okay, let's review the steps for rekeying the Schlage deadbolt. First, remove the lock from the door. Remove the crank assembly from the tailpiece if it has one. Use the cap removal tool and unscrew the cap. Remove the cap, the tailpiece, and the washer from the back of the plug. Remove the cap locking pin and the locking pin spring. Insert the key and turn the plug clockwise 45 degrees. Use a follower to push out the plug. Dump the old pins, check for master pins, select a new key, measure the key with the key gauge if necessary, pull the pins from the pin kit. With the new key in the plug, insert the new pins. Replace the plug into the shell. Remove the key. Replace the cap locking pin and spring. Replace the tailpiece, washer, and cap. Replace the lock cylinder into the housing. Test the new key and install the lock. I'm not going to rekey any more locks. I think I've rekeyed enough locks that you understand how to do it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to take a number of different locks apart so you can get the lock cylinders out to rekey them. We're going to start with this Schlage F-Series lock. On the side of the lock right here, you can see this locking catch or wafer right here that holds the knob on. Simply turn the key to 90 degrees. Then you can use a little screwdriver or a scribe or whatever, and then just go in there and depress that wafer. Pull the knob off. Okay, once you have the key out, let the lock cylinder drop down onto the back of this knob right here. And then I'm going to push from the front and try to guide it out the back, like so. We want to be careful as we take it out not to catch this cap and tear this cap off, because we'll lose all of our parts inside the lock if we do. But that's all there is to getting it out. Then you can use your little Schlage tool to push the clip off the back of the plug. Like so. Then we got a follower, and the Schlage follower with the skinny ears works good to go ahead and line up with that plug and push it out. So I turn it to just about 3 o'clock, between 2 and 3 o'clock, and I'm going to have this part here underneath my pins as it goes out. Now this may catch a little. It's not real smooth, but it'll come off of there. And that's it. And you rekey your lock, put it back the same way. Turn it around till it catches, and you've got it back in there. Put your clip back on the back, and you're ready to put that back into the knob. So these are really fast to rekey these. Now, if you have any problems, you can also take the cap off. As method number 2, you can go ahead and pry your cap off, catch it so none of the springs fly off, but you can do that just like you do with the quick set that has the removable cap. The series F cylinder caps can also be taken off. And you put that back into the plug. Now there is a slot, you can see it there. You can see that slot in there where the top of your plug is going to go in there. So turn it around so that you can see that is lined up correctly. Push your cap down to get it started. Then just take it and put it through like so. Now don't let it drop down in the knob, because it can drop down in there and get turned around. Get that in there, put your key in part way to help hold that. And then we're going to put that back on the door. Now to replace the knob and lock cylinder back on the door, start with having the key just halfway in so that you can kind of use that as a handle to line up the back of the lock cylinder. Put the knob and the lock cylinder back onto the door, have them lined up, push it all the way on until it hits this locking wafer here, and push your key all the way in. Turn that, and you can go ahead and depress this little locking wafer and just push the whole thing on. Turn your key back to 12 o'clock and you're finished. Let's review the steps in removing the plug so we can rekey the Schlage F-Series lock. First, insert the key and turn clockwise 90 degrees. Depress the knob catch, pull the knob from the lock. Turn the key back to 12 o'clock and remove the key. Let the back of the lock cylinder drop down slightly. Push the lock cylinder out the back of the knob. Remove the C-clip from the back of the plug. Insert the key and rotate the plug clockwise 90 degrees. Use a follower and push the plug from the shell. Okay, here we have a quick set lever handle lock. And again, when you approach any lock that you're wanting to rekey, look and see if there is a locking wafer, and there is. Again, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Turn the key, depress the wafer, and then put a little pressure on that handle, it should come apart. And then in this case I'm going to go ahead and take that key back out, slide the handle off, and then get the lock cylinder out. Get the plug out and rekey it. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to look at a Weiser lock. And Weiser locks come apart a little differently than the other ones that we've looked at. First, I'd like you to notice that the key only turns 45 degrees to either lock or unlock the door. And that's as far as it actually will rotate. To get the lock cylinder out, we actually have to rotate the key to about 60 degrees. Now the easiest way to get the the lock cylinder out is to use what's called a Weiser shim. It's just a little flat piece of metal. And you put the key in the lock cylinder, put the shim down beside the key, push it into the plug all the way to the back of the plug, and you will feel that push the tailpiece back. When you push the tailpiece back, just turn the key about 60 degrees and the lock cylinder will come out. You know, what you're doing with this shim stock is you're pushing this tailpiece back. If you look right here, you'll see this tailpiece. If I push it out with the shim stock, it's back in and so on. So that's what you're doing with the little metal shim. Now, if you don't have the metal shim, all you have to do is just take the lock off the door like this, just pull it out with your fingers, hold it out, take the key, again, turn it to about 60 degrees, and it'll come out. Like so. Now, what's going on with this lock? If you'll look at the back here, you see the pin stacks are here in the shell. Here's your plug. At the end of this plug is a rectangle. I know it's kind of hard to see right there, but it's more or less like this. This being where the pin stacks are in your shell. And this has to be turned at an angle for it to come in and go out of the knob. If you look in here, you'll see this catch here at the top catches the top of the lock shell. That has to go into that. So when you put it in, you want to make sure that it's lined up and it goes in there. But what that does, you'll notice when this is straight up here, that this rectangle is not straight up and down. The rectangle is turned. And so when you turn the key about 60 degrees, it lines up the rectangle on the back of the plug and it will come out. And then it has to go back in the same way. Here is the tailpiece that you're pushing on. Now you can see here on the back of this plug, we have a different type of snap ring. And you can get this off using a couple of screwdrivers, but it's easier if you have snap ring pliers. Put your snap ring pliers on there and spread the snap ring. And lift up on it. And once you have one side up, you can go ahead and just work it on off. But you want to keep your hand over that, keep a finger over that, because these really will fly a long ways and they can get away from you real easy. And if you don't have one to put back on there, you're going to have a problem. Simply take your key, turn it to 45 to 90 degrees or so, get a follower, and again, this is a little unusual shape on the Weiser, so if you don't have a particular follower that'll work on a Weiser, if you get this lined up so that the rectangle part, the top part here, is right under your pin stacks, you can still push that out of there. Just like so. Even though there's a little gap in there. You'll notice there seems to be a little gap right there, but it's not big enough that it's going to cause a problem. Okay, so when you got it keyed up, again, you want to turn it so this part here is under the top pins here. And as you turn it around again, you want to kind of be careful you don't dump your pins out. And then right back in. Like so. Take your snap ring, push it down on there as far as it'll go. Get your snap ring pliers. And then push down as you spread the snap ring. Get it all the way down. And once it's all the way down, it should snap in like that. When you're ready to put it back together, take your key. Put your key in, turn it to about 60 degrees counterclockwise. And when we put it back together, we want to remember to get the top of the shell lined up with this slot right here. So we just put it in there, like so. We have our key turned at 60 degrees. Snap it in, turn the key back. Now you see it will not go back to the 60 degrees again until we either pull the tail piece out or depress it with our shim. Put it back on the door and you're done. Now the Westlock is quite a bit different, and you'll recognize it right away here. You see this, the button here to lock on the inside is up here behind the knob, up here on the rose. And on the Westlock, if you look around the side of the knob on the Westlock, you're not going to find any holes on this 600 series. You have to take this lock off the door to rekey it. The interior knob of the Westlock is simply held by a locking wafer. You depress the wafer and pull the knob off. Then you simply take a screwdriver and you can find the catch on the rose plate. Take it off. Then there are two screws that you simply loosen up. Take that piece off. Then we can just take the knob from the outside and pull it out. Okay, now the first thing you do to rekey the lock is you remove a clip across this spring right here. This lock doesn't have one, so I don't need to remove it. But if there is anything over this spring right here, you need to move it out of the way so that this slide can come all the way up as far as it has to come up, like that, see? If you just go ahead and turn the knob counterclockwise as far as you can, it'll come out. Now once it's out, you can take the key and turn the plug 180 degrees and get the lock cylinder out, like so. There's a screw here that holds the tail piece on. Take that screw off. Okay, once you have the tail piece off, the plug will come out. You're going to need a follower with some ears on it that are long enough to go up over the end of the plug here. But just go ahead and turn the plug to 3 o'clock. Get a follower. Now if you don't have a follower like that, you may have to notch the end out of one too, so that you have one. But that's all there is. We could go ahead and rekey that lock. Okay, now one thing I want to show you that Westlock, and there's other manufacturers too, but Westlock has different size plugs. And so whereas many manufacturers operate with a plug that's right at a ½ an inch, you can see that this is almost 525 thousandths. So, you know, I could push it out with my standard ½ inch plug follower, but to get it back in, we're going to have to use a little finesse. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a piece of shim stock and we're going to place it up under the pins. And let it stick out a little bit, like so. Then we're going to take our plug, and so that the shim stock overlaps both the follower and the plug, and we're going to push that in, and we're going to push that right up over it, just like that. And then we can just pull the shim stock out the back. So it's back in there. And then we can turn it around to lock it in. Right there, it's locked in. Now, without the tailpiece on, without the screw back in here, it'll still come out. So, but I'll just show you that it is working okay. Okay, the next step is to put your tailpiece back on. Put it back on the same way it came off, and put this screw in it. Now again, you don't want to tighten that down too tight to where this won't turn. That's a little bit snug right there. I'm going to loosen that up a little bit. I think that's fine. Okay, so now we're going to put this back in the knob. Now notice this piece up here. We're going to turn the key 180 degrees and turn that around. And so that it's going to go in, it'll look like this when it goes in. We'll put it in, and then we'll turn the key back around the 180 degrees. We can take the key out at that point. And now we're ready to put this back in too the lock housing. And so we can go ahead and grab this slide and pull this slide up some to help get this started. Turn it, again, counterclockwise all the way over until it goes up in there. And we can look and see that it's moving the slide just fine. Now, the last thing to do would be to go ahead and put your clip back on over your spring. But again, I don't have that piece, so I can't put it on there. But if you had a clip from there, you should put it back on. We're going to look at a few locks that are sold by some of the large suppliers, the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart. We may as well be familiar with these locks because these stores, sell so many of these. But this is the Defiant brand, which is sold by Home Depot. Now this is the Defiant knob, that key-in knob that is sold by Home Depot. And again, it's like other ones we've seen that has the poke hole with the locking wafer to retain the knob on it. Just turn the tailpiece so that the lock is unlocked. Just like before, turn it around until you see the locking wafer. And of course, if you can do this while it's still on the door, you don't have to remove it from the door. If you can feel or see the wafer to unlock it. Remove the sleeve. And simply clip to snap off and rekeys like all the other locks that you're used to. So again, that's the Defiant key-in knob from Home Depot. You don't have to turn the plug with a key to be able to take this off. Just so that the lock is in the unlocked position, it will come off. Now, in putting it back together, it only goes together one way. Just make sure that it's in the unlocked position, that you didn't accidentally turn it to a locked position. Just so it's unlocked, then just line everything up, slide the knob back on, and that's it. You're good to go. As you can see there, this is the Defiant deadbolt. Again, very easy to rekey. Just pop the clip off the back. Now again, this is one where you can leave the tailpiece on. These tailpieces are really not designed to come off the plug. They're crimped on there. And so really you don't want to try to take those off. I mean, they can come off and you can put them back on and crimp them back on, but there's just no need to, because it's designed to slide right through the shell of the lock. So just like this, we can push that right through with the tailpiece on it. Rekey it just like we always do. Push it right back in. Put the clip right back on it. Gatehouse is the Lowe's brand of locks, and these will rekey much the same as the Home Depot Defiant brand. This is the Brinks brand, which is sold by Walmart. Here we have the Brinks deadbolt. And as you can see, it just has a screw-on cap that holds the plug in the cylinder. So just like all of the other ones we did, we just like the Schlage I showed you, just unscrew it. Just like so, to rekey this lock. Okay, now this is the Brinks doorknob, key and knob lock that Walmart sells, and if you look at the other side of it here, it looks very familiar to us. See the tailpiece on here is a dead giveaway that this is nothing more than a quickset lock. There is a shield here. It has two screws that hold it that would need to be removed so that we could get it apart and rekey it. But you can see, I'm not going to take this apart because we've already done the quickset lock, and that's what we have here. It's a quickset lock. Another lock that's sold by Walmart is Mountain Security. Okay, now this is the Mountain Security deadbolt from Walmart. And this does have an interesting feature that tells you right here that you can remove this decal and basically have access to the chambers to rekey this lock. The other option is to, just like we always do, just push off the clip that holds the cylinder. Then you can leave the tailpiece on this deadbolt. Just you need a follower that's hollow that will go over the tailpiece, and then you can just push it out. And I really think that's just as fast or faster than removing the tape and doing it through the tape. So now if you do want to just remove this label to rekey the lock, just simply peel it off. There's a cap underneath it that we have to remove. Once you get far enough back to remove the cap, that's as far as you have to go with removing the label. You then get the plastic cap to come out. Then put your key in it. And then you rotate it around to where you can see the pins. Just dump the pins out. Load your new pins in there for your new key. Take the old key out, put the new key in that you want to rekey it, and just load the pins in like you always do. Okay, once you have the new pins in there for your new key, you can just turn it back around. Take your key out to hold everything together. Go ahead and put your little cover back in here. Press the label back down. And so that's what that's for. It's just to allow you to easily rekey that. But I really don't think it's any easier doing this with the label than it is just popping the clip off and rekeying it that way. But that is an alternative way to do it. Okay, I want to show you another lock that is out there on the market, and it can be a little bit deceiving. When you first look at it, it looks like a quickset lock. From the outside, the way it appears, if you take it apart, you'll see the inside you have the half spindle and the spindle, and the same basic locking mechanism. And you can take the spindle out the same as you do the regular quickset lock. Take that out. But then if you go to put this quickset tool down in here, it will go in there. You can put it in there and you can get it down and you can push on that lock. But that lock cylinder will not come out like that. And so if you find a lock like that and it looks like a quickset lock, but it just will not come apart, then you may have to pull the spindle out, and then if you don't have a key, pick the lock and turn it 180 degrees. I have a key for this one that I made just so I could show you this, but you turn it 180 degrees and then it will just come out. And the way it works, it has these little catches here on both sides. There's a spring that will pull them in when you turn the key 180 degrees, but you cannot turn the key 180 without pulling the spindle out. So if you watch those, you'll see they'll spread back out. Once I bring the key back around, see them go back out, and then again, back in, and back out. And you can also notice there's little slots here in the knob here that those retaining clips slide up into. Better thing about this lock, when you go to rekey it and you're pushing the follower through, you have to get it to go by these little locking wafers here. And so just, if you kind of jiggle the follower a little bit, you can get it through there, but these will try to catch your follower. And so if you're not careful, those will get away from you and go up inside the shell of the lock. You can simply pull the spring off, take them back out, and put the plug in, and then put these back in. And it's not that difficult to rebuild it, but that is one thing to watch for when you, if you do try to rekey one of these types of locks. All this really is just some cheap import lock. I'm not even sure really what name this lock is imported under, but I've come across quite a few of them in recent years. Okay, I want to show you this lock, and I want you to notice that I'm going to pull the handle off here, and I want to unscrew this rose here. Notice that this unscrews. This side over here can be adjusted by screwing it on also. Okay, well, Schlage makes a lock like this. This is not a Schlage lock, but it's very, very similar to a Schlage lock, that if you see where the inside rose screws on, that you're going to have either a Schlage C or a Schlage D series lock. And I want to compare that to this lock. This is a Schlage lock. And notice that there's two screws here that hold this inside plate on, this mounting plate. Okay, there's no threads here on this hub for a piece to screw onto. Okay, this is a Schlage A series lock. Now I want you to notice here that this key, maybe you can tell that key looks a little bit different. Maybe you can look into the lock here and see if the lock looks a little bit different. This is a wafer lock. And if you come across the lock and you look up in there, you're going to be able to tell that that is not a pin tumbler lock, it's a wafer lock. And the reason I'm showing you this lock is because if you come across that, you cannot get this knob off from the outside, and you cannot get the lock cylinder out. This lock has to be taken off the door and taken apart, and the lock cylinder slides out through the inside. Now, I'm not going to break this down because there's just not that many of these left out there, but they did make millions of these, and it is quite possible that you will come across one of these Schlage A series wafer locks. And so if you do, just know that you cannot get the outside knob off, and you cannot get the lock cylinder out without taking the lock off the door. Okay, here's another one. This is, again, the same lock. It just has a different style of knob from the first one. But if you look at the keyway, you can see that they have the same keyway, that they're both wafer locks. Okay, now what if we have a lock where we have to turn the plug to get the knob off, but we cannot pick this to turn the plug? Well, this is a cylindrical lock. It's a real good lock. It's quite possible that there's dirt and grime and junk in this keyway that is preventing us from being able to pick it. But for whatever reason, whatever happened, let's just say you try for 15-20 minutes and you can't pick the lock. Well, instead of drilling it, one alternative is to go ahead and take, if you can get inside the building and take the lock off, take the back of the lock off and get the screws out and remove the lock set from the door, it may be possible to disassemble this and then turn that tailpiece in there enough that you're going to be able to go ahead and get the locking wafer depressed so that you can remove the knob. Now there's 4 of these metal pieces, but only 2 are holding this cover. This one, and then you can see this one here is bent also. So we'll straighten that. And if we got them both nice and straight, let me check this one again. We should be able to wiggle this cover off. Now you notice on here that this says Marks Hardware 110 series, and so that identifies as to who put the lock out. And there's going to be some springs inside these locks, so you want to be careful. Okay, now on this particular lock, we want to take this piece here off next, and these same metal pieces that we just bent a second ago are also holding this piece on. There's 4 of them this time, and we just have to bend those out a little bit, and that will come off of there. Now there's going to be springs in here again, so you want to be careful as you take this out. And it's a good idea, if you're not familiar with it, to make some pictures. So we have this piece off. Notice these little washers right here. We don't want to forget where those are at. Okay, so there's my springs. Just like so. Okay, now this is a picture of looking down. This is the knob set and what is left. We're looking down in there. You'll notice that there's a couple of pieces here that do move around. And the next step is to get that out of there. This piece here just lifts out. It's going to be hard to see, but down in there we can actually see the retaining pin. It's right, I want to move this stick out of the way, but right there where I'm pointing, you can see the retaining pin just to the right side of that tail piece. And what I try to do is I try to take this is just a broken off pick that I have, but you can use any kind of wire, but if you have a pick that's been damaged or whatever, you can take and you can use that. So I go down in there with my pick and I try to push that down. You can feel it go down. I can feel I'm pushing it down right now. And so I got it pushed down, and then I'm going to try to take my needle nose pliers and turn the tail piece around. Now you notice the knob just turns around now because we took everything out of the back. But we're going to turn it back to where the retaining clip is. It's right there. And then I'm going to see if I can take my wire tool and depress it any. There it is. So it's off. And you can see that, if you look here, the retaining, we moved this around. Retaining pin's under here. But I was able to push it down and turn that tail piece enough that we were able to depress the locking wafer and get it back out. Okay, now to explain that one more time, what I did inside the lock. Here's the lock cylinder, here's the retaining pin, here's the tail piece. And I took a pick, and if you hold the pick so that a flat part of the pick kind of goes up into the groove. It'll help to hold the pin. So take the pick, push the pin down, hold the pick right against the tailpiece. Take a pair of needle nose pliers and grab both the pick and the tailpiece and then just turn. And you'll see that it'll come right around. Now once you have the lock out, it's a real good possibility that you'll be able to pick this lock open. Take the cap off the back, spray it real good with WD-40, put it into a vise to hold it for you, and then try to pick it again. And by having the cap off the back and being able to spray lubricant from both sides, get it cleaned out real good, there's a real good chance you're going to be able to pick this lock open. The other alternative is to shim the lock. And I'm going to show that in the next course, course number 4. I will come back to this same exact lock cylinder and I will shim this lock open and make a key for the existing pin setup that's in the lock. Okay, I'm going to put this back together, but I'm going to do it as quick as I can because we don't have too much time left on the video. But this here I'm going to just refer to as the lock housing or the lock chassis. This is a sleeve. You can see that it moves in and out a little bit. It won't come all the way out because of the retaining wafer that's holding it right now. But there's some things you can kind of look for if you forget how it came apart. You can see these little spots here that hold the springs for the retractor. And that's one thing you're going to, so you know the retractor has to come in so that the springs hit up against that. And then as far as getting the sleeves in the right position, you know that you have your poke hole. And the locking wafer has to line up with the poke hole when the whole thing's back together. So if you look, you'll be able to see right there the retaining wafer. So that should be in that position. Then the other sleeve that goes in here, there's another part to it. Just drop it in and it's going to line up like that. So those are a couple of things just to get you started that should make it a little easier to get the lock back together. Okay, so I'm going to put this back together now, and we have the exterior part of the lock here in a vise to help hold it. Here's my spring that goes down in the center of the sleeves and the exterior part, and I have my retractor and springs ready to go. And then on the interior hub and sleeve, remember we also have ears on that. And those ears have to be pointed down the same direction as the other ears. So you want to have that set up and ready to go, just like you need it. Then put that aside. Take your retractor and your springs. Put that in there. Back into the housing. Make sure your springs are lined up right as you push it up. Double check everything. Okay, everything looks good. Then we're going to hold this up and take the locking bar. This part that protrudes has to go into a slot at the top of the carriage here, the retainer, retractor, like so. And then you have to hold all of that. I can look and I can see that my locking bar is in the slot where it's supposed to be. And it is not easy, I will tell you. Then grab your interior sleeve and hub. Make sure it's turned the right way, like I said. If you put that down on there, then you can put your finger on that locking bar to help hold that while you push that down. Get it down on there. Okay, this side is down here. I'm going to go ahead and grab a pair of pliers, bend that in a little bit to help hold that side. Then I'm going to turn it around here, look at the other side. This side is not quite down. I think my ears turned a little bit there. There we go. So my ears had turned, I just had to twist it back a little bit. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just twist that over there to hold that. So that's back on there, and it's not real difficult to do that once you've done a few, but the first one you do you might find frustrating. Now once you have your tabs lined up back so they're nice and straight, take your case, the cover for the case, put it on. Now this will go on two different ways, so make sure that you're actually over the part you want to be over, this retractor part. And slide that down over that. And if you have to, you may have to wrap it a little bit with a rubber mallet or something if it's not lined up just right. But that, if you get those lined up just right, it'll go right back on. Then take and bend a couple of them to hold it on there, because you don't want it to come back apart. Now I have a key for it. I went ahead and I made the key, but that process of shimming the lock and cutting the key using the space and depth keys, I cover that in the next course, course number 4. But you can see I have my key made, and again we'll show that in the next course. But just put the plug back in. Sometimes it's a good idea just to put the key in part way to help hold your plug there. Take your sleeve that goes on the back of the knob, get that back on. Some sleeves have a little notch that has to line up with the slot. This one doesn't. Push that on good, and then you just put it back on your lock, just like normal. Okay, here's the lock with both handles on. And again, it's a storage room lock, so you can see that the interior, there's no push button or anything. It's always ready to open. It's always unlocked. And on the outside, you always have to use a key to get in. That's what a storage function lock is. And you can see again that it's working fine. I want to just show you on this lock, this is a Schlage lock. They use cotter pins here. Instead of the little metal tabs bent, they have these cotter pins. You got to take those out. Okay, so I took the cotter pins out and I'm working this off. There's 2 metal pieces, one on each side, little pieces that are pushed in on this casing. So once you get it loose above these little metal pieces here where the cotter pins were holding, then just turn that around and it'll slide right on off, just like so. And then you can see that it looks much like the other lock we were working on, that it has these tabs here holding this plate, which is covering again the retractor and the springs and so on. So anyway, it's good to know how these things come apart and go together. Now if it's a tubular lock, they're not as expensive, and I don't do this for tubular locks, but if it's a cylindrical lock, I will try to do this for the customer, and I'll explain it to them that I'm going to want another $10 or $15, whatever, some nominal fee. I don't do it for free, but you are saving the lock. So it is worth something if you can take that apart and then get the lock cylinder out. For rekey purposes, key and knob locks can be divided into 3 basic categories, determined by how the process begins. I'd like you to think about each of the locks that we've studied and think about which of these 3 groups the locks belong in. How did the rekey process begin? Do we have to remove the lock from the door? Did it start by we had to turn the key, depress a locking wafer, and remove the exterior knob? Or could we simply have the lock in the unlocked position and then turn the knob, depress the locking wafer, and remove the exterior knob? For practice, one of the best things you can do is collect old locks, take them apart, and rekey them.
Try to find the most popular models and the most popular brands to work on first. However, if you do find a lock that is unusual or rare, it would still be worth having in your collection. Go to the manufacturer's websites to find installation instructions, rekey instructions, and exploded lock diagrams. Build a library with as much information as possible. Practice taking locks and lock cylinders apart. Make a note if there is more than one method to tear down and rebuild the cylinder. Practice looking for and removing master pins. The more locks that you are knowledgeable of, the more confidence you will have in being able to complete the job in a professional and timely manner. That completes the basic skills portion of this course. Following is a bonus section on the history of locks, Part 3.
In the history of locks, Part 3, we're going to look at 5 different locks that led to the development of the modern-day pin tumbler lock. The Egyptian lock, the Brom lock of 1798, the Stansbury lock of 1805, the Yale Senior lock of 1844, and the Yale Junior lock of 1865. The development of the modern pin tumbler lock started thousands of years ago with a lock that is referred to as the Egyptian lock. It was called that primarily because it was so popular in Egypt. As far as actual physical evidence, the oldest known lock was found in the ruins of a palace in the city of Khorsabad, which was near the ancient city of Nineveh, the present-day city of Mosul in Iraq. The lock consisted of a wood crossbeam, a vertical beam with tumblers, and a large wooden key with which the correct corresponding tumblers or pegs to make the lock work. From its widespread use in Egypt, it is referenced to as the Egyptian lock. Okay, here we can see a working drawing of the lock like we're talking about that's called the Egyptian lock. It had wooden pegs or tumblers that would drop down into holes in this crossbeam here. And then there was a large wooden key that had pegs on it that would align with the holes and then also push the tumblers to the correct height to create a shear line so the bar could be pulled back. And here you can see a hole in the door and a person with their hand reaching through the hole to unlock the lock. These types of locks have been found in Japan, Norway, and the Faroe Islands. These locks are still in use today in Egypt, India, and Zanzibar. The second lock we need to look at was invented by an Englishman, Joseph Brom, who patented a barrel-shaped lock in 1798. The Brom lock used a key which consisted of a small metal tube with slots in the end. When the key was pushed into the lock, it depressed a number of sliders, each to the depth controlled by the slots in the key. Only when all of the sliders were pushed to exactly the right distance could the key be turned and the bolt thrown. And what happened was there's slots in these sliders that would line up with slots in this wheel that surrounded this centerpiece. Also note the spring here that would keep the sliders pushed up in the locked position until the key depressed them. Here you can see a picture of an actual Brom lock that had the post in the center that the key would come down over, and then a slot to position the key in the right position and also to help turn the lock. And here you can see the sleeves that would be pushed down as the key pressed down upon the center of the lock. Here you can see the end of an actual Brom key. The lock is significant for 3 reasons. It used a rotating center, it used a precision-cut round key to push the tumblers to a shear line, and the way the spring was used to hold the tumblers in the locked position. The next lock we need to look at was invented by an American physician, Abraham O. Stansbury, who designed a lock using a rotating core concept from Joseph Brom and also used the Egyptian pin tumbler design. He received an English patent in 1805 and a U.S. patent in 1807. It was the first lock patented in the United States. This is the rotating center piece here. Notice this larger hub-like structure behind. That section, which is behind, it had these flat springs. And the flat springs had pins that would push up through holes. The pins would come all the way through and grab this part that rotated, so it could not rotate until the pins were pushed in. The key was designed to go over a post and had these protruding pins that would line up with the holes and be just the right distance or right length to push the pins into a shear line. If they pushed in too far, it would again relock the piece that turns here, so they actually were double acting pins or double acting tumblers. Here is the larger hub, and inside the hub you can see these flat springs. And on the other side of the flat springs there were pins that went through, and the pins would grab this centerpiece in these holes here, so that the key, which you can see here, went over a post. It was hollow here, went over a post, had these pins attached to it. So these would be much like your lower pins in a modern day lock. And they would go in and they would push the other pins out of the way and create a shear line so that this centerpiece could turn. Although the lock was never manufactured for sale, its design included a rotating center, pin tumblers, segmented pins, and double acting pins. Linus Yale Sr. lived from 1797 to 1857. In 1844, Linus Yale Sr. of Middletown, Connecticut, patented a lock called the quadruplex bank lock. The lock included concepts used in all three of the locks we just discussed. This is a drawing from the Linus Yale Sr. patent of 1844, which shows his concept, and he has the segmented pin stack. It's like a little leaf spring, again, flex steel right here that was putting the pressure on the pin. But you had a round plug here with, in this case, 4 pin stacks. The key would go in, it would push each one of these out to the correct position. The key was a round key. It was like had a fluted end on it, and each flute was designed to work one of the pin stacks. So the shear line would be created right around the outside of this plug. Between this would be the plug, and this would be like your shell up here, and then again with the spring on top of that, and 4 springs here going around that. Here's the key. And here's the pin stacks. Again, this is the drawing from the patent application showing the pin stacks. And of course it doesn't show the spring up here, but the spring would be putting pressure down on that. Looking down on the center of the core, you can see in this drawing the end of the lower pins sticking out. And as the fluted key went in, it would push all 4 of these pins out just the right distance so that to create the shear line around the plug. So that was a significant improvement, a very large advancement in moving us toward the modern day lock. The Linus Yale Sr. lock, patented in 1844, included a rotating center plug, pin tumblers, segmented pins, double acting pins, and spring pressure on the pin stacks. Linus Yale Jr. lived from 1821 to 1868. Linus Yale Jr., the son of Linus Yale Sr., is credited for the most important modern lock development in the history of lock design. He improved upon his father's lock designs using a smaller flat key with a serrated edge that is the basis of the modern pin tumbler lock. Yale mortise cylinder lock, U.S. patent 48475, was issued on June 27, 1865 to Linus Yale Jr. And what you see here is the actual drawing for the actual patent application. And you can see here what looks like a modern day mortise cylinder with a plug in the center and then a shell. Here's a side view you can see of 5 pin chambers. And you can see lower pins, upper pins, and coil springs. Here's a picture of the front of the plug, again showing the pin stacks. The 1865 lock used the same basic design as the modern day pin tumbler lock and included all of these features: a rotating center plug, inline chambers, segmented pins, double acting pins, coil springs, serrated flat key, and it was easily rekeyable. We are now going to look at 6 other developments in the locking hardware industry that we should be aware of. Samuel Siegel was a New York City police officer who saw a need to protect residents from thieves jimmying or spreading the door frame to gain entry. The original Siegel lock was developed in 1912 and was quickly accepted as the best way to secure a door against unauthorized entry due to physical attack. He invented the jimmy-proof rim lock or interlocking deadbolt in 1916, and he went on to obtain 25 patents. Like many other lock companies, the Siegel Lock Company was bought and sold several times. In 2008, Primeline Products bought the Siegel line from Assa Abloy. In 1919, Harry Seref invented a padlock design that used laminated steel layers to economically produce an exceptionally strong lock body. And of course, you'll recognize that as the master padlock. Now, a few other inventions that you may want to be familiar with. Frank Best came up with the idea for the IC core and patented that in 1920, and we'll be looking at these locks more in course number 14. Probably the next big jump in locking hardware can be attributed to Walter Schlegel with his invention, which came in the 1920s. The revolutionary Schlegel lock is a completely different concept of a cylindrical lock with the button and the knob mechanism placed between the knobs. We'll talk more about the history of the Schlegel lock in course number 20. In 1933, the Chicago Lock Company introduced its tubular key lock. They called it an ace lock, and many people still refer to a tubular key lock today as an ace lock. Roy C. Spain and his team introduced the Medico high security lock cylinder in 1967. We'll be learning more about the Medico locks in course number 18. That concludes this course. We want to thank you for buying this course, and we hope you found it informative. Please visit our website at www.locksmithdvd.com and review our other videos that are available for purchase.